Hello, everybody. Dave and Tiff back here with you with another podcast episode. And, this is the week after the primary election. I don't want to talk too much politics, but hey, Tiff, did you vote? How did your voting go here in the state of Hawaii?
Hey, no vote, no grumble. I cannot grumble. I voted, and congratulations to all who ran, who were successful in going from the primary into the general in November. And a lot of former people in sports that made it into the general come November. And Keith Aumemia, who's very well known for us because of what he's done with high school sports over the years, and of course Rick Blangiardi, who's done a lot with Hawaii News Now. Now he's going to be in the mayoral race come November. Congratulations to all.
Yeah, and it's always interesting. I like to take a little bit of interest, not a little bit. I like really following up. And so the thing about the weekend with the primary election on Saturday is I kind of started thinking about some of the politics that relate to sports. Now, one of the big ones, obviously, is how conferences are dealing with the pandemics. Another one I want to touch on is the NBA and how Chris Paul, I don't think he's been given as much credit in terms of his role as president of the NBA Players Executive Committee. So in terms of the Executive Committee of Players, he's the president. The role he had in terms of getting this bubble restart to go. But before we even touch on that, we're going to have a great guest. Speaking of NBA, we're going to have Joey Ramirez, who came from Hawaii, University of Hawaii, as the University of Hawaii Kaleo, the newspaper, the sports editor, and now is the Lakers digital reporter. And the Lakers clinching the West a couple of days ago, but not, I guess you could say, not playing that well in the bubble. So he'll join us a little bit later in a few moments. But the Mountain West is the latest conference to drop the shoe, and they are reportedly going to be canceling or postponing fall sports. So the impact with the University of Hawaii for football, especially the MAC, made that announcement on Saturday. Mountain West apparently is going to make that official announcement maybe today. Your thoughts on that?
It's unfortunate, but it's with everything that is going on right now, and not just here at home, but around the country, around the world. It's a situation where health and safety of everyone is at the forefront, or should be at the forefront. And I understand and I get that with all these conferences with college football, that it brings in a lot of money, a lot of revenue for these institutions, namely the Power Fives, but also for the Group of Fives. And as it trickles on down through the FCS, D2, D3, is that a lot of these athletic departments are able to replenish their money reserve, if you will, based off of the football schedule, based off of the football season. And so for these schools to not have that ability for the fall semester, it's dire times. But as much as I want college football, as much as you want college football, as much as we just want college sports in general, it's an unfortunate time where the health and safety of the players and everyone directly involved should be at the forefront before our entertainment value is put into consideration.
I've said this multiple times on our podcast that throughout this whole pandemic thing, I've always been of the attitude of, trying to see, take all the information you have, do the best that you can to make it as safe as possible for all the participants, and make it a point to try and do as close to normalcy as possible. In other words, trying to have a season, trying to move forth with a sport or activity. I've been one for schools to say, let's have at least some in person. Of course, in Hawaii, they took that all away. It's going to be all distance learning, at least for the first 4 weeks. So if we look at the MAC, the Mountain West, saying they won't, I'm kind of in line with like the Southeastern Conference. Now, granted, they are a big football conference, and you would expect the Power Five to kind of really hold off on making any decisions. The Big Ten, if there's one that's kind of leaning toward postponement, supposedly the presidents of the schools are really leaning toward that. But the SEC commissioner, Greg Sankey, who says, I want to be patient. I don't want to make a decision just yet. I want to take my time, let the information come, and kind of wait till almost the last minute to make any kind of decision. And on the Big Ten side, Jim Harbaugh was saying, hey, I'm in favor of playing because the data shows that we can be safe and possibly hold a season. And there's another guy, Senator Ben Sasse of Nebraska, who wrote a letter saying that, hey, it's actually potentially safer for these student athletes to be in football because you have these resources for the health and the safety of these players versus if you have them on campus and you don't have football. So there are some of these arguments to say that let's wait. And usually I'm kind of anti-Power 5, but in a way I'm kind of for them, kind of holding off and at least being a little bit more patient before making an announcement.
Well, that's the same thing that the quarterback over at Clemson, Trevor Lawrence, said yesterday on Sunday, the fact that there are a lot of collegiate players that they want to play, and that's the hashtag that they were bringing out on Twitter yesterday is we want to play, let us play. And you get the idea of where he's coming from, the fact that, like you just said, that it's almost somewhat safer for these collegiate athletes, depending on where they come from, that it might be safer for them to be on campus in their perspective bubble or their specific bubble, as opposed to being at home and whoever they're living with, it could be mom and dad, or for many situations here on the island in this state where you're living with multi-generations within the same household. And so having to be exposed to people of different age groups. So you get the argument from both sides. It's just a tough situation because whichever way you lean towards, you can see the pros, but also the cons.
Yeah, and so the Power 5 have yet to make an announcement. I guess people are really waiting for them. Two teams have actually spoken on behalf of their own selves. Old Dominion said, regardless of what Conference USA says, we're not going to play football. We're not going to play fall sports. And UConn, they're an independent. They've already said they're not going to participate with fall sports. So two schools have made the announcement. Two conferences in the football bowl subdivision had made the announcement of postponing fall sports. So we're going to see how many more shoes fall. Tiff, I mentioned about the election and the politics. We're going to talk a lot of NBA today because we're going to have Joey Ramirez from the Lakers joining us shortly. But I want to touch on the NBA. Coming down to the wire in terms of the regular season or these final 8 games for the seeding, however many games, I did want to shout out a little bit of recognition for Chris Paul, one of the announcers when I was watching a game.
Well, except for today's game, right? Because they got boat raced.
Chris Paul's been playing well. OKC took a loss today, but Chris Paul, as the president of the executive committee for the NBA Players Association, while Major League Baseball took a long time to get their season started, the NBA was able to get theirs restart rolling before any of the others, before the NHL and before MLB. And although a lot of credit is going toward the executive director of the NBA Players Association, the commissioner, Adam Silver, one of the announcers mentioned a lot of credit also goes to Chris Paul in his role in terms of he was really involved in all of the discussions that was going on in terms of the commissioner, the league, the Players Association, him communicating with both. It seemed to have been a very good open dialogue between all parties, and he was a big part of it. And sometimes people think, he's a player, they kind of we just want to play, but he took his role very seriously, and, kudos to him in getting the restart going.
Well, yeah, and then you see a lot of the older players, but also the younger players bringing up the fact that they have this platform not only on the court in their bubble in Florida, but also with their social media influence, and how a lot of these players, you look at Jaylen Brown and the Celtics, we just talked about Chris Paul, but also a few other players that have been able to talk about social justice, social reform, Jimmy Butler as well. A lot of these older players, but also younger players coming together to utilize their platform to bring out not only the fact that they want to play, but also to bring light and bring more into the limelight these social justice issues that have been around for so long.
By the way, who's your favorite NBA team?
Well, because you're a Lakers fan and our guest is a digital reporter for the Lakers, I'm going to side with my fiance here and say the Boston Celtics.
Oh, good grief. Are you serious? Karen is a Boston Celtic fan?
Yeah, yes, she is. Yes, she is. And I know. When we went and tried to get a hold of Joey Ramirez, who will be coming up with us in the next couple seconds, knew I was going to be outnumbered. But the fact that we have a Hawaii tie in the NBA, who's not necessarily in the bubble, but covering a team some 2,000 miles away in a bubble, thought that was more of a better route to go with than where we could have gone for a guest this week.
And speaking of our guest, he is waiting in our green room on hold. I'm going to bring him right in. And although not in the bubble, but covering the Lakers for their digital content, a former University of Hawaii Kaleo newspaper sports editor. And now he has taken his route to being the digital reporter for the Los Angeles Lakers. We are joined now by Joey Ramirez. Hey, Joey, how are you? Can you hear us okay?
Yeah, what's up, Tiff? What's up, Dave? How we doing, guys?
Hey, Joey.
Doing very well. First of all, how is it you're not in the bubble? How is it having to report on a team in this mode of, we talk about schools going distance learning, you're having to do distance reporting. How has that been for you?
That's a good question. First and foremost, I think it's a lot better than reporting in the bubble. I don't know how the people out there are doing it. I could not survive being in a bubble for months on end, so all props to those people. As it pertains to me, I mean, one of the best things about reporting in 2020, particularly sports reporting, is that you can do your job remotely, right? And I think that's a good lesson for a lot of up-and-coming sports journalists, sports media folk, broadcasters. You don't need to be right in the thick of it. And maybe this pertains even more accurately to people in Hawaii too, where there is no NBA, there is no NFL, but that doesn't mean you can't cover this sport. That doesn't mean you can't, be impactful in this arena just because you are remote. So to answer a little more directly your initial question, there is some challenges behind it. It's a lot of, we're doing Zoom instead of in person. We're relying on broadcast angles rather than actually being in the arena. We're not getting a feel for what the players are saying on the court. What are their interactions like, trying to read between the lines there. But we are in a good spot where, we do have access to a certain degree over the internet, and we do have more angles. It's not the 90s where we got one angle of a square TV. We have unlimited angles, it feels like sometimes. So we do feel like we're getting an accurate representation of what the team is doing out there, even if we're not getting that close-up view. You know what I'm saying?
Gotcha. Now, Tiff, I just found out he's a Boston Celtic fan, so we're going to push him on the side for just a moment. And I am a diehard Lakers fan, have been so since the 80s and Showtime. But, I'm curious, give us a little story on how you got this gig, your journey from being the Kaleo sports editor and how you got to this point.
I mean, first and foremost, I'm only answering questions from you, Dave. That's it. Tiff cannot be part of this if he's going to bring that Celtic allegiance in here.
Fair enough.
To answer your question, I think I am where I am because I went to Kaleo and I went to the University of Hawaii back in the day. I don't think I would have made it to this point in my career without that. And I truly mean that. I know there are a lot of great journalism programs, communication programs, student newspapers all around, America, different broadcast schools and all of that. And while certainly I respect the kids that come out of there who come out already polished to do the job that I'm doing, I think that my the course that took me to here had to go through Hawaii and had to go through Kaleo, because out there I just met so many dedicated people who really did want to bring out the best in me, and who really went out of their way to embrace me and to give me opportunities and to kind of show me the ropes and let me grow. I think that the way that I came out of high school, I was only 17 years old when I came out to UH from California, and I think I could have easily gotten lost and gotten drowned and not have, found my way. I was just that young and that green. but the people out there really did embrace me, and they helped me find my passion for sports. And before I know it, I'm writing stories for Kaleo, and I'm making appearances on KTUH, and I'm calling softball games at Rainbow Wahine Stadium, or I'm calling baseball games at the Les. And all these different things, these little pieces that kind of cobbled together the experiences that I needed to when it was time for me to come back to the mainland. And part of that actually entailed that UH was kind of ahead of the curve when it came to distance learning. I came back to the mainland for my senior year, and I was able to do all my classes online because I knew I wanted to go for an internship like the Lakers or like a pro sports team in the LA market. And so having UH being able to say that, and obviously now, like, everybody's distance learning, right? Like, we don't have a choice now. But back in the day, for them to be ahead of that curve and to say, you know what, Joey, if we structure your classes the right way, we can make this happen for you. That really opened up a huge door for me, in addition to all the other doors that being out in Hawaii opened. And so when it just so happened that the Lakers internship did open up as I came back from Hawaii, I was really able to grasp onto it, both because I was able to come back to the mainland and because of all the experiences that UH and Hawaii writ large really opened up for me while I was out there. And from there, it just kind of, it was, you know, in my opinion, it was a matter of destiny. I think that everything that happens for a reason. And that was kind of where it got me to today, where I'm 6 years later, love my job as much as I did on day one.
Joey, when I travel and I'm in California, I have ESPN 710 LA on all the time. I know Spectrum Sportsnet LA is on our household as well as Dave's out here, and it's on you know, television all the time. But for you to have the opportunity to talk, to have conversations with some of the GOATs in the business, you look at Michael Thompson, John Ireland, Mike Trudell, Stu Lance, Billy Mack, Billy McDonald. What have they been able to do to help you grow in your profession?
Oh man, so much. Every single one of those guys, as you just mentioned, has taught me so much in 6 years. And I'd be remiss if I also didn't say that the people in Hawaii also taught me so much. Tiff, I mean, not to blow up your spot right here, man, but the energy and the passion that you bring to calling women's volleyball, and Dave, I honestly, I haven't heard as much on your front, my guy, but the passion that you two bring, and the passion that a Brian McInnes or a Dave Reardon, a Ferd Lewis, Stephen Silas, all these guys who brought me up in Hawaii, I just owe so much to them because they really did reach out to me in my formative years. And then in addition to that, now being here in LA and the guys that you mentioned, especially a guy like Mike Trudell, who really did take me under his wing. Same with Bill McDonald. These guys are just good people who know that they're in an enviable position. They know that they have jobs that people would kill for, to be broadcasters for the Lakers. And rather than to hoard that and protect that and to guard the secrets so that only they have them, they really have reached out to the younger generation and they've given me advice, and they've given me projects to do, which I think is honestly the best thing. That's most people want the advice or they want the opportunities, but really I think one of the best things that you can give somebody is a project that brings stuff out of them. So especially from Mike and Billy, they from day one they gave me this project of coming up with notes for them for the broadcast. And every time, when I'm 20 years old and it's my first internship and I'm working for the Lakers and everything is cool, and I hear Billy Mack say one of my notes on the air, and I'm just living it up. And from there, that instills in me, you can do this. Like the things that you bring to the table really do make it on the air with a guy like Bill McDonald or with a guy like Mike Trudell. And then B, here are the things that they value, which means that you should value it too. And from there, they've just taught me one lesson after another. And really, I owe so much to those guys, in addition to all the guys back in the 808.
Lakers digital reporter Joey Ramirez joining us here on the Dave and Tiff podcast. And Joey, the 2019-2020 season, which is still continuing here in August, which is something that the NBA in August, it's something that hasn't happened before. And there's been so many storylines with the team you cover, between LeBron coming, AD as well. But one of the unfortunate stories of not just the Lakers season, but of the NBA, Kobe Bryant passing away, and that tragic helicopter crash taking him and his little girl, of course, a few others on that helicopter as well. Describe for us, because we got to see it on TV, but for you to be in Staples Center the first game after that tragedy happened, describe Describe the moments, describe the atmosphere both outside and inside the facility.
Yeah, man. I mean, honestly, it's a little hard not to get emotional when thinking back on that night. I was fortunate enough to be there for his last game back in 2016, and that was just such a magical experience. I'll never forget that night. And in some ways, this past game, the first one without him, was kind of like a mirror version of that. For all the joy that 2016, that last game brought, 2020 kind of brought that sadness. But it also, the one through line was just the appreciation of Kobe, which, I mean, you know, Hawaii is very much a Lakers state, at least last time I checked. And so I do think that we felt the shock waves, not only here in LA, but across the world and in Hawaii, definitely. Here in LA, man, I can't think of a single passing of anybody, celebrity, politician, musician, athlete, etc., that really shook a community as much as Kobe's passing shook LA. And I think that says a lot about not only who he was on the basketball court, but who he was as a man. What kind of a symbol he was of the power of hard work and the power of determination and of the mind and of trusting yourself and self-improvement and just so many things that he represented to so many people. And then, of course, on top of it all, the power of being a father. And so there was so much emotion that night because Kobe meant so much to so many different people. And I think it was great to kind of see that come out from the players and fans outside of the arena versus fans inside of the arena. And every single inch of LA, it felt like, had a mural on top of it because there were just so many people trying to outpour their emotions around what this guy meant to them. And that's special because there are only so many people like that you'll see in your lifetime. And Kobe Bryant was definitely one of them. And I think that's what will stick with me the most, is just seeing the different ways that people paid tribute to Kobe, whether it was the anonymous artist in Long Beach, painting on the side of a building, or whether it was Usher at center court on the day of that game, singing Amazing Grace in Kobe's honor. There were just so many ways that people paid tribute. And I think that it really does speak to Kobe is such a global story, but he's also such an LA story. And I think that the kid who came in at 18 years old from Italy via Philly and all the experiences that brought, and then to be here in LA for 20 years and to make himself a symbol of so many different things to the point where he did have this enormous impact upon his death. I think that there will always be the Kobe story in LA, and obviously not just LA, but the world. But when you come to LA and when you come to Staples Center specifically, you know, you can't help but think about Kobe.
Hey, Joey, I want to transition a little bit now into the present after that great, you talk so highly of Kobe Bryant. The current team now clinched the first place in the West. Yay. But then it seems like there's more of a concern, like, yeah, they got the first place, but they're not playing very well in the bubble. And having played a lot of basketball before, I know that it takes time to kind of get cohesive with a group of guys, especially with the fact that Avery Bradley's not playing, Rondo is not available just yet. So it takes some time. How's the fans in LA? Is there that concern of, well, we got first, but it doesn't look good? What's the tenor there?
Yeah, there's always going to be concern, right? Especially in today's social media fueled atmosphere, you can't help but be concerned. That being said, what I always come back to is there has been this pattern with LeBron James teams. In the final 4 games of the regular season for LeBron James teams that make the NBA Finals, if we're looking at just the last 5 teams, they've gone, I think, 6-14. So 8 games under 500. So LeBron teams do have this history of throttling down for the regular season and then ramping it back up in the postseason. Now, is that exactly what is going on with this Lakers team? I don't know. I do think this Lakers team is a lot more talented than the way that they've been playing in the bubble. I think most people would agree with that. The Lakers are, I want to say, 2-4 in the bubble as of this taping, with a game later tonight. And I don't think anybody thinks that the Lakers are a 2-4 type of team. So I do think the truth is somewhere in the middle. Would you want the Lakers to be playing at a much higher quality right now? I do think the universal answer there is yes. I think people want to see a LeBron triple-double and 80, 50-point game to kind of settle the nerves. But that being said, Frank Vogel is playing rotations that really we haven't seen all this season. We haven't seen Jared Dudley playing 20 minutes a game. We haven't seen Taylor Horton-Tucker, the rookie, playing 20 minutes a game. So this isn't the team, and these aren't the lineups that you're probably going to be seeing in the postseason. So I do kind of have that caveat. That being said, the initial question was, how are the fans feeling? I think the fans are feeling anxious. And I know I see this big smile on Tiff right now. I know he's loving it because he's a Celtics fan. But I'm not going to lie to you. I do think the fans are anxious. Whether that is a cause for concern, we'll definitely see next week as the first round of the playoffs comes in.
Joey, has there been any difference in viewing games? I mean, between, how the regular season was going and how it regularly was having games scheduled to now in the bubble. Has your viewership, has your ways of producing content, has it changed based on the season now being in Florida solely in this bubble?
Yeah, that's a good question. I would say in subtle ways it has. So part of my responsibilities are, as digital content manager of the Lakers, is to kind of guide our game day coverage from a Lakers social standpoint. So in addition to the work that I do as more of a traditional reporter, kind of breaking down plays. Here's how Braun was effective last night. Did you see what Alex Caruso did on the defensive end? That kind of stuff, which I really thrive in as a basketball nerd, to be honest. That kind of stays the same because that's more, film study, and that's more digging into the analytics and talking to coaches about, hey, what am I seeing? What I think I'm seeing here? That kind of stays the same. But as it pertains to, hey, here's what the Lakers are putting out on their social channels on a given game night, that definitely changes because we're used to having, 3 video guys in the arena and a packed Staples Center full of fans giving us the atmosphere, and photographers, up in the top ring and down on the court and so on and so forth. And now in Orlando, we only have one guy. So that definitely takes a lot of wind out of our sails. And so part of our, and that guy, for the record, is an amazing content creator. His name's Rohan, and he's just done a Herculean job for us. But it definitely does, going from that whole team of content producers to just one guy, it definitely does affect what we do from that aspect. And that really is one of the big things that we try to do here at the Lakers, is bring the fans closer to the game, bring the fans closer to the team, that sort of stuff. So it does make that tricky. But fortunately, I do think we have the right guy out there, and the rest of us here in LA trying to do the best that we can to make sure the fans are still getting their LeBron content, their Caruso content, their AD content.
Joey Ramirez joining us, the LA Lakers digital content manager, and not in the bubble, but actually back in Los Angeles. Thanks for joining us. And again, former editor of the Kaleo Sports edition of the University of Hawaii paper. Give me the scenario. If I were to come and intern, or, I'm a visiting media person from Hawaii, and I want to have a chance to hang out with a Laker player. Of course, we all want to hang out with LeBron James, but based on personality, how cool they are, how interesting they could be in an interview, who would you recommend?
Oh, that's a very good question. There's a lot of, honestly, this team's got a lot of personality, so I ain't gonna lie to you. There's a lot of tough choices. JaVale McGee, who maybe you've seen his YouTube vlog from inside the bubble, is hilarious. Can't go wrong with JaVale. He will keep you entertained throughout. Alex Caruso, super down to earth. You wouldn't even know that this guy is a top-notch defensive guard in the NBA, because he is, just like, it's almost like he's still in a dorm room sometimes. Like, he's that down to earth. Let me think. LeBron, obviously. I mean, that dude, as you said, like, he's just one of a kind. But side note, but the fact that he came in with as much hype as he has, and he still maintains at least a semblance of being a down-to-earth, relatable kind of guy who wants to just have tacos with his family, like, that speaks so much to that guy's character. And then let me think. Can I get you an underrated one? I would say an underrated guy would be Danny Green. Very chill dude, very low key, kind of like Caruso, where He's trying to have a good time, not trying to, soak up too much of the limelight. Just a very chill, very down character.
I hope he heats up in play, though, Danny Green. He's got to get some shooting up there because the Lakers' offense is not clicking as well. But Tiff's got another question for you.
Joey, sources close to the Dave and Tiff podcast have brought it to our attention that during a couple of the seasons of the men's basketball, the Big West Conference tournament over in Anaheim at the Honda Center, you and your family were always present at the mixers for UH men's basketball, of course, for the Rainbow Wahine as well, but also the fact that during the championship run, you weren't courtside. You were around the main concourse area. What was it like to watch portions of that game from the main concourse area?
Now I think I know who you're referring to when you ask this question. I don't even know if I'm supposed to say his name. Is he still anonymous?
He is still, as far as we've been told, he is still anonymous. Yes.
Okay. So my guy, fake 808 Sports, I'm gonna blow him up at least that much of his spot. I'm gonna blow up. He is one of the best guys I've ever met. If we're talking about people who influence your path, he's one of those guys. And also, if we're talking about people who really look out for the next generation and always seeking to lift people up, he's one of those guys. So all of my appreciation goes out to our guy. He's also one of the most nervous UH fans that I've ever met, and one of the most superstitious. And so I can't remember exactly if it was semifinals or finals, but I met up with him before the game. We were super excited. He was super nervous. I knew the whole time UH was going to pull out the win. He was too nervous to actually watch the game from inside the bowl. So he and I watched a few minutes of it from outside the bowl on these little tiny TVs, these like iPod mini TVs that they got hanging up above the hot dog stand. And I would do it again. I'd be there for my guy. But we definitely enjoyed at least a few minutes of that game up there because he wasn't quite ready to watch the Bows in action down and in the main concourse. Eventually, I think he did go down there. I know I did. I wasn't about to watch the whole game up there. And sure enough, I believe that was the year that the Bows ended up winning the whole thing and then upsetting your boy, Tiff, Jaylen Brown, and the Cal Bears at the NCAA tournament. So maybe he was onto something. Maybe that superstition did work out. I love that guy. Again, you meet so many great people just in the UH atmosphere, and he's definitely one of them. And I'll never forget watching, I think, at least the first half of the first half up in that concourse with him. And eventually we got to celebrate on the court, storming the court after UH won it all. So great memories right there, man.
Now, we're not going to conclude this interview without either of you telling me who this dude is, because I have no idea who this person is. Is it national security that he must remain anonymous? Am I going to get threats at my home if I were to inquire who this person is? Anything like that?
Tiff, I'm going to let you speak for this, man. I'm not trying to get in trouble.
Okay. Well, both Joey and I, who this person is, Dave, he is one of the biggest Hawaii supporters you will find out there. He's across social media, more so Twitter than on the Instagram, which you just found out last week what IG actually meant. So this guy is a big UH fan. You name the sport, he is there. He's always there for the players, for the student athletes, but he doesn't have a pro team. He's just a big UH fan that just wants to see them succeed as much as possible.
Wait, all that introduction and no name?
Yeah, we can't give away his name. You see him at UH football. You see him at men's volleyball. You definitely see him at men's basketball. You look for certain people wearing UH paraphernalia, namely the jerseys, and you will see him in the lower bowl.
Great.
I'm not going to give away his name. Yes.
We're in a pandemic, so I'm not going to see him for a while. So that's. Hey, Joey, I know you got to get ready for a game tonight. The Lakers are playing the Nuggets. And, I'm really hoping that, like the trend with LeBron teams, this is just a dial down. But, Rondo is coming back, hopefully within the first round. Some of the bench, hopefully, is getting acclimated. And Coach Frank Vogel, with his experimenting, the lineup will be set. We'll see a better Laker team in the playoffs. I want to ask you the final question. Who do you think is going to be that 8th team in the West that the Lakers will meet in the first round? Who do you think?
Man, that's a great question. My heart says it's going to be the Blazers. I think Damian Lillard is a top 5 player in this league. He is such a killer. And then the supporting cast is also absolutely top to bottom playing phenomenally right now between Gary Trent Jr. and Yusuf Nurkic and all those guys. But I will not count out the Suns, who are surprisingly 7-0 in the bubble as of today. I got to give respect to those guys too. Again, if we're going to talk about killers, Devin Booker, man, that kid can shoot the lights out. So I'm not going to sleep on any of the teams on the bubble, including, San Antonio and who else is still in the mix? Memphis. I love the way that guy plays. But if I had to say, I would say Portland, and then I wouldn't want to mess with Phoenix when they're 7-0 right now.
Yeah, for the hottest team in the bubble, that's for sure. Hey, thank you so much, Joy, for not only sharing some of your thoughts of your time back at the University of Hawaii, but taking some time out with us and giving a little insight of Lakers behind the scenes. We really appreciate it. Thanks so much.
Anytime, guys. I appreciate always talking to the guys back in Hawaii. You guys are great at what you do. Keep it up. Hopefully UH Sports are back soon so we can get both of you guys back on the air. But in the meantime, love what you guys are doing.
Thanks, Joey.
Thanks, Joey. And beat the Celtics. Right on.
You know we will.
Joey Ramirez, the digital content manager reporter for the Los Angeles Lakers, former editor with the Kaleo sports section in the Kaleo newspaper at the University of Hawaii. First of all, I'm going to get back to who this fan is a little bit later on that both you and Joy are not telling us. But he said he'd prefer not to be in the bubble. But I guess being outside, you always want to be in, and if you're in, you probably want to be out. But I would like to be in the bubble and kind of be a part of this very unique situation, covering a very unique season without any other distractions aside from the games and your coverage. I think that would be kind of interesting.
It really would be, and whether it's the NBA, the MLS, the NWSL, or the NHL, now that the Stanley Cup playoffs are going to be in action beginning on Tuesday, whichever bubble these professional sports are in, it would be very fun. It would be very fascinating. Sure, you'd be away from friends and family for a significant period of time, depending if you were covering a specific team or if you were representing a media entity. Like you said, it's a situation where it's unique. It's something we have not seen in a very long time, if not ever. And so to be a part of that, whether it's with one team directly or with the league in general, it would be something quite interesting to be a part of, for sure.
All right. Well, we've talked about a lot of stuff so far. We always conclude our podcast with Tiff's Corner. So let's go right into that. Always interesting to see what stories you bring up. Let's go into the corner, Tiff.
All right, Dave. So we remember Megan Huff, former Rainbow Wahine basketball player and also a volleyball player as well, transferred to Utah. She was picked in the 3rd round by the New York Liberty last year during the draft. She was signed by the Lynx of Minnesota in the offseason coming into this 2020 campaign. And then she was picked up and signed by the Las Vegas Aces over the weekend on Saturday. And she appeared in 1 minute on the game yesterday against the New York Liberty. Coincidentally, ironically, a win over the New York Liberty. So congratulations to Megan Huff for making the WNBA once again.
Yeah, and I still feel some pain when she transferred from the University of Hawaii to the University of Utah. But again, you still gotta wish good luck to her. Wish good luck to the WNBA to have their season go all the way to completion as well. Another team in the Florida bubble.
We're going to move east, and in the same state that's been housing the MLS's back tournament, of course, the WNBA and the NBA as well. In Orlando, UCF, Mackenzie Milton, Dylan Gabriel, their stadium officially became the Bounce House over the weekend. It was changed from Spectrum Stadium due to stadium partners. They're in between stadium partners right now, and heading into this fall 2020 season, at least we think there's going to be a season for the AAC. UCF is no longer Spectrum Stadium. It is known as the Bounce House. How cool is that nickname?
Okay, is Bounce House connected with a sponsor? Is there some company, Bounce Incorporated?
No, it is not connected with any sort of company. It's more so because they have that nickname based off of the fans bouncing up and down during every single home game, and it was the unofficial name of the stadium.
Oh, hey, go for it. At least until someone else decides to throw in millions of dollars to get naming rights, you might as well make the fans happy and enjoy that part. Right on.
We'll keep it on island. This one came out from Hawaii Prep World's Paul Honda, also KITV4's Cody Krupp. Every Friday morning throughout the last 3 months, the Kaimuki Bulldogs football team and their families, not sure if you saw this, Dave, but they go to their school's athletic complex every Friday morning to help distribute food boxes to the community in need for those in the Kaimuki area, as we've been continuously hit in these tough economic times, that they've been able to help out their community and reach out in any way they can.
Wow, that's another, you bring up these stories, these positives that have come up due to the pandemic. And, we've talked about how we feel so sorry for these student athletes because their sports are being postponed, canceled. But, these good stories, these feel-good stories about young kids and their mentors, their coaches, leading them into doing these great things. I think that's the one big refreshing element about all this.
Couple more, Dave. This past Tuesday, Melanie Newman, and she's in our industry. She became the fourth woman to call play-by-play for a Major League Baseball broadcast. She made her debut on the Orioles radio network in a game against the Miami Marlins, and she joins Colorado Rockies' Jenny Kavnar, New York Yankees' Susan Waldman, and also ESPN's Jessica Mendoza. How awesome is that?
Oh, how awesome. And we've seen, as far as female reporters, they're just dominating the sidelines, like in college football, basketball, college NBA. So it seems like the natural progression. Eventually, you're going to see them in the booth. We've seen a few, Doris Burke as a commentator for NBA, that more taking that play-by-play role. So it's just a natural progression, and I think that's great to see, and you'll see more of it.
Next week, we'll give you a little tease here. We're going east. We're going into the Boston area. A guy who covers the many sports within the New England Sports Network, and that's where he works. And NESN, former KITV sports reporter, now works with New England Sports Network. Jemiah Webster will be joining us next week.
Yeah, and glad he'll be joining us. And we're gearing up for the NFL because they're starting training camps. So far, they're the next sport that could be continuing and doing what we are hoping they all can do safely. And we'll talk with Jemiah. You know what I remember about Jemiah when he was here? He played in that, remember when UH would have those midnight Ohanas, and he was one of the celebrities that played against the Rainbow Wahine. And I think he had to work. He showed up in his Aloha shirt, jeans, and loafer shoes, slipping all around the court because he had no grip. But he got a pass in the corner, threw it up there, swisheroo for three. And then I remember I was the PA announcer, and all I said was, "It's got to be the shoes." I wonder if he remembers that. I'm going to ask him that.
He probably does. Maybe he still has the shoes, and who knows? Maybe he can donate those to us, and we can put them in the Dave and Tiff corner. Could be our first thing in our corner.
Yeah, our Hall of Fame items of memorabilia. And before we sign off, Tiff, are you not going to tell me who that ultimate fan is for UH who goes off?
I am not going to tell you on the podcast.
Yeah, it's because you're a Boston Celtic fan. But with that, we want to say thank you to Joey Ramirez, our guest today, who's digital content manager for the Los Angeles Lakers, former sports editor of the Kaleo at the University of Hawaii. We had a great Tiff's Corner, great show here today. Tiff, thank you so much again. Nice background as always. And until next week when we have Jemiah Webster, Dave Kawada, Tiff Wells, we're telling you, enjoy, have a safe week.